What is up, boys, girls, and everyone else? James Baek here with part 2 of our Series 8 restricted tier list. If you don't know, I've done pretty decent at restricted formats. I have gotten 2 regional championship wins, including 3 international top cuts, 1 win, and 1 finalist appearance, including that, and 3rd place at the 2019 World Championship, and that was the last time we had a restricted format. So I know a little bit, and I'll be sharing my knowledge. This is part 2 of the tier list. So part 1, if you haven't missed it, down below in the description you could go find it. And yeah, make sure you check out part 1, especially if you want my insight to the current ranking, including the Pokemon from Generation 1 to Generation 5, mid-Gen 5, because we're still continuing off actually where we left off in Gen 5. But yeah, of course, if you do enjoy the videos, be sure to leave a like down below and leave a comment down below, as it really does help me out. Let me know if you enjoy this kind of content and if you would like to see more things like this. And of course, be sure to let me know at the end of this video what you think about the opinions that I have, and do you agree, do you disagree? Be civil with it down below in the comments. But yeah, it really does help on my videos as well. But today we are going to go through part 2, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Even if you think you're subscribed, just double check to make sure you are. 40% of my audience who does watch my videos aren't actually currently subscribed to the channel, which is a lot, because that is like a 10% increase that I guess from last month, and I think that's a good thing, I guess, because that means I'm getting more viewers. So if you aren't subscribed, make sure you subscribe. You get a lot of great BTC content here. But let's get started with part 2 of this tier list. We're going to be finishing up today, and yeah, let's wrap it up here. But otherwise, let's get started with today's video. So we have the tier list. This is where we left off in the first place, and we are going to be finishing the tier list today, starting with the Kirum forms actually. So we have regular Kirum, Kirim Black, and Kirim White, and they're quite a bit different from each other, so I will go a little bit in depth of like all of them. So if you don't know, we have Kirum, the original Kirum. My god, of course it is like the hollow shell. Before Black and White 2 ever existed, this Pokemon was pretty much a joke, realistically. I mean, it has a good HP, its defenses are kind of mediocre, but with its high HP stat it's like all right, and then 130 in attack and special attack with like 95 speed. Why did they make Kirum 95 base speed and Zekrom and Reshiram 90? I don't get that. I really don't get that. But yeah, so we have regular Kirum. As you can see, for stats on a restricted Pokemon, not exactly the most impressive. Like, it really isn't the most impressive. Like, again, it's attack stat and special attack stat. For restricted, not exactly amazing. Of course, this is like a hollow shell Pokemon, basically. So yeah, it's not a completed form. And yeah, what we can see here, its ability is pressure. It's not really like an amazing ability. It doesn't get a hidden ability. And overall, as you can see from its moveset, Dragon Ice, not too bad. Dual wing beats. Its signature move is Glaciate, which is basically just a stronger ice move, I guess. It's basically a stronger icy wind. It's the same accuracy. It's like 10 base power stronger than icy wind, and that's really it. It's literally not a really good signature move at all, and I don't get the point of this, because it's literally icy wind is 55% power, or 55 power, and this is 65. It's spread the same thing, but like, why? There's literally no point of running this. Like, why? I guess like if you want to run Icy Wind Kirim, sure, but like it's really poor for a restricted move, I think, or like, you know, a signature move, not restricted move. But you get my point. Like, why did they do Kirim like this in the original game? I don't get it. I guess maybe they had a story out planned. Move pool wise, other than the Glaciate over Icy Wind, which I guess if you want to run like a support Kirim like that, I guess it does get like access to Freeze Dry, which is nice. Its move pool, not that bad. It gets recovery, but overall I think it's very underwhelming, especially since we have like 2 fused forms which do a lot better. It's the same typing and have better rolls in general. So like when I look at regular Kirim to like everything else, it's very underwhelming. So let's look at the actual other Kirims before we move on to like ranking all of them, I think, at the same time. So we'll go into Kirim Black now. This is definitely a better restricted. So as you can see from its stats, a lot better. As we can see, it literally got 40 more attack for the trade-off of 10 for special attack, which isn't bad, especially since this is supposed to be a physical Pokemon. Also gets a little bit better coverage because it does get action or access to Fusion Bolt, which is really nice, and pretty much has the exact same move pool than regular Kirim. I think the only thing I'm not sure if it gets, no, it still gets Glaciate. So literally there is no point of using regular Kirim over like Kirim Black or even Kirim White at that case. basically pretty much gets the same move pool. And yeah, I think the only thing that's really beneficial to it, of course, the difference is Fusion Bolt, which, you know, is an electric type move. It doesn't get Bolt Strike, which is a little bit unfortunate. It also gets like this like Free Shock move, which isn't really that great because it's a charge up move. It's a really strong move, but not really that worth it, even with the Power Herb. So you're pretty much with Kirim Black. I think the interesting thing about Kirim Black is I always thought it was like a very high potential restricted Pokemon back in the Sun and Moon series. I actually brought Kirim Black to a regional championship back in 2019, and it was really good at the time because like during that time period, it was like a bunch of Yveltal Groudon teams mainly. So like I brought Kirim Black as my counter, and it did fantastic against those. The thing about Kirim Black back then is you pretty much had to go mixed or full special committed, because the thing didn't have really a good physical ice move that like was reliable, because it only had like the Free Shock move that charge up, which you couldn't really use. So yeah, wasn't that great. Kirim Black, pretty nice. Fusion Bolt unfortunately isn't stab because it still keeps dry and ice coverage, but overall it's not a bad Pokemon. It gets like a lot of good stuff. Gets steel coverage for Steel Spike, gets Quake as well. It gets dual Wing Beast for like Airstream stuff. It gets Body Press. I don't think that's like absolutely necessary though. Ice coverage with Freeze Dry, Ice Beam, and Icicle Spear. It finally gets a good physical ice move in this generation, so you don't actually have to go commit to full special or mixed. You could actually run like a full physical set, which I think is really nice if you don't need to run, because like again, 120 isn't like the worst, especially if it's super effective, but like 170 attack is still very solid. So I would definitely like to go physical on this. And yeah, I think Kirim Black definitely got better. It's definitely one of the Pokemon that get buffed. Unfortunately, I think Kirim Black didn't get buffed at the right time. I think Zacian, they made it good when Zacian's a thing, but I think overall Kirim Black's pretty nice if you're not facing Zacian, or if you're facing one of the Steel Restricteds or the Xerneas, because it's actually pretty good against a lot of the other Restricteds with the ice coverage, and can hit like a lot of the Psychic and Ghost ones super effectively with Shadow Claw, which I think is actually not that bad of a move on it, as I ran Shadow Ball in Moon series to help deal with Lunala, which actually did come into play. So I actually think Kirim Black does have potential overall. I think it's a pretty, like, I always thought it was like a dark horse candidate, and I think it still could have worked in Sun and Moon series. I actually really liked it. Unfortunately, in this format, I feel like the Dynamax Steel types are going to give it a lot of trouble, and there's definitely a lot more switches I think to Kirim Black overall. And yeah, I think that's like one big thing here. So yeah, before we move on to Kirim Black and like judging out, we'll go to Kirim White as the form. You might as well compare it if you don't know. It's basically the Reshiram fusion of the Kirim. So Kirim Black is based with Zekrom, and this one's based on Reshiram. And if you can expect, basically it's the same thing with the attack and special attack reverse and getting access to Fusion Flare. So man, 95 is like such a good speed stat for like would have been like, I guess, Reshiram and Zekrom, and then they could have made like Kirim 100, and it actually would have been very, I think it would have been like great having this like a little bit faster. But yeah, Kirim Black actually, or Kirim White, hits really hard and actually does have a few VGC results back in 16. This was a thing. Kirim Black was never really used at all in restricted format. I think I'm like one of the few players who've actually used it. I don't know if there were many others that used it, but yeah, Kirim White actually did have like a few results at the time, like between 2016 and 2019. I think it had a few regional cuts actually. Overall, this thing was very powerful. Like the thing about Kirim White was like the fact that you could hit like Primal Groudon with like big powerful like Earth Power, which was pretty strong with the Life Orb. And of course, like Turbo Blaze and Terravolt, you can ignore the Lightning Rods, the Levitates, like stuff like that, which is actually pretty nice for them. You could ignore Flash Fire with this as well. And overall, it's the same move set, except it gets Fusion Flare. That's basically it. So you could run like very strong ice moves, and yeah, Ice Beam, Fusion Flare, Flash Cannon, Earth Power. I think the only thing about Kirim White is that it doesn't get a special flying type move, if I'm not mistaken, compared to like Kirim Black, who couldn't abuse dual wing beats and fly. But I don't think Kirim White actually gets it. So that is one benefit of using Kirim Black over Kirim White, depending on like what coverage move you want and like where you want the. Do you want attack or do you want special attack? But overall, I think these Pokemon actually did have like, man, if this was like an older format, again, Zacian and like Solgaleo and Necrozma being more popular, Dustmane wise, a lot would have been pretty good. But I think there's like obviously a very big need for steel types in general in the format. because of the fact there is Xerneas, it helps against Zacian a bit. And overall, I think it makes it tougher to run like the Kirums in general, because I think the steel types are even more popular, especially the steel type restricteds compared to like a previous format. And yeah, they can boost up with max quake and like weakness policy, and it's like really hard to avoid that. So I think it's really hard to run these Pokemon now. Although like yeah, I think it's just like harder to run these Pokemon in general. I think if I just think that Icicle Spear in 2019 would have been pretty fantastic. But overall, my verdict on the regular Kirum, I think regular Kirum, D tier Pokemon. The reason is it's probably like the lowest of D tier, because there's literally no point of running regular Kirum over Kirim Black or Kirim White, which literally have more offensive capabilities, and it's literally the same Pokemon. There's really nothing special, I believe, unless I'm completely wrong. But I believe there's not anything that's worth it over regular Kirum compared to the other Kirums. And if you can find an argument for that, leave me a comment down below. But yeah, regular Kirum is a D tier. And I think I generally think Kirum would definitely be a C tier Pokemon now. I think they could be better than Reshiram and Zekrom, but I'm not 100% sure. I'm not like too worried about ordering. I think it's, yeah, I think I would put Kirim Black there and then Kirim White here. I think overall the ordering of C tier is like very loose. Like you could easily like put any of these like higher. I think Lugia would still be bottom, but overall I think like these would still be in the same place. I just think struggling against the steel types is really tough. It does struggle against some of the restricteds in the higher tier, and overall still takes a lot of damage from like, you know, Pokemon like Calyrex Ghost and like these higher restricteds. It's just like very tough. I think its speed tier is a little bit awkward. 95 isn't exactly the fastest, of course. And yeah, I think overall these Pokemon had a lot more potential back in previous formats, especially like 19. But I think in this format, where like steel types are definitely going to be a very big thing, especially Dynamaxing those steel types, it's going to be harder to run these ice type things, especially with like more Pokemon that can hit these ice types. For instance, Urshifu is going to be a common Pokemon probably in this format, and Fairy is definitely going to be important. So yeah, I think I would definitely put these in C tier. I think that would be a fair placement for the Kirums. I'm not sure between what's better between Kirum and the Reshiram Zekrom, but I think that's a pretty fair placement. Next, we got the legendary Pokemon of Generation 6, Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde. And oh man, these Pokemon are insane. So if you don't know, Xerneas and Yveltal, yeah, Xerneas and Yveltal are actually insane Pokemon. They are actually insane. So Xerneas right here, if we look at its stats, we have pretty high, like it's got great HP. Its attack is not right. Like, you might be thinking, oh, James, you literally have been contradicting yourself, where you said their attack and special attack aren't like great for restricted, because you said these 130s are generally low, like you said for Ho and for regular Kirim, right? And yes, that normally would be the case. It has pretty decent bulk with 95 and 98. It's not like super amazing, but overall it does work. And 99 speed, it's good enough. It's good enough because it literally outspeeds a lot more of the Pokemon that are on the restricted list than it should be. But you might be wondering why. So the thing is about Xerneas and of course Yveltal is Fairy Aura and Dark Aura. If you don't know, these abilities, when this Pokemon is on the field with this ability active, Fairy type moves gain a 1.33 power, or multiplier 1.33, which is actually insane. So normally 131 isn't exactly the best, but combined with Fairy Aura, it actually does a lot of damage. And this is going to be paired with something later, but Fairy Aura and 131 is actually a pretty nice multiplier. But then Xerneas has a signature move. It's a signature move. It's called a Geomancy. And what Geomancy does is a charge move that you take a turn charging, and then the second turn you gain a +2 increase into your special attack, special defense, and speed, making this thing a massive threat. Because if we look at it, it has already pretty decent special attack with Fairy Aura combined. Special defense and speed are pretty alright, but when it's +2, becomes a monster. And with Fairy Aura on top of that, Xerneas makes so many calcs not matter. And what I mean by that is like resistance is futile. And I mean literally. Like it doesn't matter if you're steel type, you are still most likely getting 2-hit KO'd by this Moonblast from Xerneas. Granted, no Dynamax because I'm talking about 2016 and 2019 generally. But yeah, for instance, Primal Groudon had to run so much special defense, even though it resisted Moonblast, to prevent Moonblast from always being a 2 KO, and sometimes it generally was a roll or just like generally 2 KO the bulky Primal Groudons. It's absolutely insane how strong Xerneas could be after Geomancy. And you might be thinking, well, it's a charge move, so you get 2 turns, right? Nope. That is because you have the item called the Power Herb, and Power Herb, as we've seen before, like with Meteor Beam, basically ignores that charge turn and allows it to charge up on the second turn and use that move. So Geomancy is able to be a 1-turn move, and yeah, that's all you really need. And yeah, this thing has been a monster, probably one of the best Pokemon that literally has never won a world championship in the Masters Division. It is absolutely an insane Pokemon where it dominated so much of the restricted format in Generation 6 2016 and then Generation 7 2019. It just did so much work ever since its release. It's absolutely an incredible Pokemon. There were literally memes of like Fake Out Geomancy, Dark Void Geomancy, Smeargle, Xerneas known as a Monkey Lead. And yeah, with the proper support, it's absolutely incredible, especially with like Incineroar that came out with Intimidate, made it absolutely great to cover in 2019. And yeah, this thing just does so much damage. Moveset wise, it doesn't have the worst move pool, but overall, I think you only need 4 moves on Xerneas realistically. Moonblast, Dazzling Gleam, Geomancy, Protect. That's all you realistically need. It does not need anything else. It did get Draining Kiss, but I don't think it changes anything. It gets a good support moveset. This thing is the best thing for Geomancy, and that is the #1 reason why you should run Xerneas. Geomancy is absolutely incredible. You could run your tech Focus Blast or Flash Cannon. Definitely not worth it in my opinion. Generally, just Moonblast and Dazzling Gleam. Dazzling Gleam spread move too. Makes it so hard for opponents to switch in. Does massive damage under Geomancy. I don't see a point of running any other move than like Moonblast, Dazzling Gleam, Geomancy Protect. Although there were some substitute Xerneases over like Dazzling Gleam at times, or like substitute over Moonblast at times. But overall, I think like just a classic bread and butter Xerneas, Moonblast, Dazzling Gleam, Geomancy Protect. There's nothing wrong with it. It's a dominant Pokemon. It does a lot of work. Now, this thing, no Primal Groudon is huge because Primal Groudon was one of the better counters, and Dynamax gives Xerneas a little bit of an interesting mechanic. So the fact is, with Dynamax, you can prevent things like Roar, for instance, or like yeah, basically Whirlwind, that kind of stuff, to like try and get the Xerneas out, and then it can't really reuse Geomancy because of the power being gone. But yeah, Dynamax gives it an option. If it's after Dynamax, you can yeah, prevent those kinds of strategies. So, but of course, there is the downside for Xerneas. I think Xerneas, of course, usually like it was fine being weakened after Geomancy as long as you were able to get good hits off. I think it's a lot harder to set up Geomancy now. Dynamax is a big factor here, and like Xerneas doesn't want to Dynamax before it gets a Geomancy off, and like to set up a Geomancy can be really troublesome. I think Zacian being one of the top Pokemon well in this format just makes it really tough for Xerneas to actually like effectively sweep teams, especially because like substitute Zacian, like most common partners on Xerneas were like Incineroar and Amoonguss, and then like maybe another restricted. And usually the rotation game would be like Fake Out, U-turn out to get like Amoonguss in for redirection, and then like try to protect or like get the Geomancy up at the right time. It is definitely possible to set up Geomancy, but I think it's a lot harder and requires more patience, I feel like, with setting up Geomancy because of the fact how Dynamax works, ignoring Fake Out. You have substitute Zacian, which can definitely punish a rotation game of playing defensive too much. And yeah, I think it makes it Xerneas a lot harder to use. So I don't think it's like nearly as dominant because of the fact that even though like this thing +2 max or max fairy move can do a bunch of damage, of course, it's not like absolutely like I think insane. I think like Xerneas also, like Xerneas will take probably damage during the Geomancy process a lot of the time. So like you'll be getting less out of your Dynamax in terms of like HP numbers, and of course it's like you're stuck using a single target move. So I think Xerneas actually got a little bit worse. I don't know like if it's still gonna be like amazing. I think like this Pokemon's still absolutely insane. It is one of my favorite Pokemon to use because I abused the heck out of this Pokemon in competitive Pokemon. And yeah, I think if I were to rank Xerneas I think it should still be an S tier Pokemon, except I think it'd be like bottom of like S tier, I think, because I think it's really strong. Yeah, I think it's like it takes a lot more work to set up properly, like in high level competitive play, especially when most teams will have like ideas of like how to approach Xerneas. And again, I think Zacian will be very common and it will hurt Xerneas, but Xerneas does have really good matchups in general, and it's like really hard to stop, even if like one or two, because most checks to Xerneas are mainly soft checks. They're not actually like strong checks at all that can like absolutely deal with Xerneas, especially with the right support Pokemon, because there's a lot of good common Pokemon that just like help out Xerneas. Incineroar, Amoonguss, Landorus, T, Intimidate does fantastic. It's really hard to KO if this thing gets a Geomancy up. But yeah, I think Xerneas is an S tier Pokemon. I do think it is weaker than it was in the previous generations, but we'll see. I haven't seen too many Xerneas as of late so far, but definitely could, you know, maybe move up if like there's a specific team for it. But yeah, next we have Yveltal, Xerneas' counterpart, and yeah, this thing is actually insane. So Yveltal is like the same bulk basically, and it's actually like the exact same thing to Xerneas. It's literally the same thing as Xerneas. Why does the HP bar look different? But yeah, if you get the point, Yveltal. Oh, and you're like, oh, Xerneas is so broken. What broken move does Yveltal have? Yveltal doesn't have nearly as a broken move. It has Dark Aura. It's basically the dark flying type version of Xerneas. And it does get Dark Aura as like a 1.3 multiplier to its dark type moves, which is pretty nice because dark type is a really fantastic like offensive typing. Its signature move, wait for it for anyone who's unfamiliar with Yveltal, it's a move called Oblivion Wing. And Oblivion Wing basically it's just a flying type attack, but it recovers 75% of the damage dealt. Now it's not a bad move per se, it's actually a pretty good move, but when you compare it to like Xerneas, it's definitely not exactly like as strong, right? However, it can be really useful, I think, in situations, and it actually is a very good move in this generation because one, it's so max airstream, and after airstream, if you take damage with Yveltal, you could always heal back up, and I feel like that's a big thing. I think with Yveltal going to be playing this, especially since Yveltal is really good against like a lot of restricted Pokemon in this format, barring like of course the Yveltal or dealing with the Xerneases, of course, if they become popular. I haven't seen too many though. In Zacian, of course, Zacian can be a little bit of trouble because Behemoth Blade does a lot of damage to Yveltal. But yeah, moveset wise, it's not bad. It gets Dark Pulse, Snarl, Foul Play. It gets Hurricane. I think you don't run Hurricane. Even though it's a more stronger max airstream, I think like you always run Oblivion Wing because of like the benefits of like being able to heal, which I think is really nice. Bruce, and it does get Tailwind. I think I said in a previous video it lost Tailwind. I think I was misspoken. But yeah, it does actually get Tailwind this generation, so it could be used to support Pokemon. Taunt, and yeah, there really isn't too much. The most common Yveltal sets, unlike Xerneas, which really only runs the Power Herb, you saw meme sets of Xerneas with like Choice Band, Choice Specs, but they were never really good in high level play. But overall, Yveltal, very flexible actually. You could run a lot of sets. Life Orb is definitely one of them. Dark EMZ was a thing back in the 2019 format. You could even run MZ at times. Weakness Policy is probably the more common Yveltal set probably now. Previously it was like Life Orb, Z Move, or Z Crystal. It was also Assault Vest, which I think is still pretty solid. Bulky Berry was even the thing on Yveltal. And yeah, it has a lot of options I think in general. The more common set in the Sun and Moon series was the Assault Vest Yveltal, and in the Ultra series it was the Berry Yveltal. And I think Yveltal is really good because of the fact that this thing's really bulky. Like, it is really bulky, has pretty common weaknesses. I think Policy is definitely a great set for it because you could like max airstream if you get the Policy boost, which is pretty easy to handle, even like self-proc, like with Ice Shard or Draining Kiss from Comfey, for instance. And then like you take all the damage, you're doing all this damage, and then afterward Dynamax is over, you can Oblivion Wing and heal back the HP with the +2 Oblivion Wing, and it does fantastic work in my opinion. So yeah, you could also run as support. There are definitely a lot of ways to handle Yveltal. I feel like Yveltal would have been absolutely insane if it wasn't for Xerneas, because Xerneas is always like that thing that always held Yveltal back. But if Xerneas wasn't around, Yveltal would actually be destroying back in previous series, because this thing, it was like really hard to deal with. Like it's like it did a lot of damage. Foul Play with the Dark Aura did so much damage to like Primals, for instance. It was quite insane how much this thing could just tank an attack and just like, oh, just the damage of this back was pretty powerful. I think overall there are so many sets you could probably run. I think Weakness Policy is going to be the better set. Life Orb could be a thing. I think the bulky sets are pretty viable as well because it is hard to KO this Pokemon at times. And overall, I think it's a very solid Pokemon. I think it has a pretty good role here. If you're going offensive special, I think it would be Dark Pulse, Oblivion Wing, Heat Wave, and Protect. Although you could run Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch still does a lot. Like you can, like even if you're like the special Yveltal and go like Timid Yveltal, like a Sucker Punch with Dark Aura boost is still going to KO like Calyrex, for instance, which is still pretty solid, or Calyrex Ghost Rider or Shadow Rider. But yeah, I think Yveltal is a really insane Pokemon. It's harder for a lot of Pokemon to hit. I think Xerneas is definitely taking a drop. It's really good against a lot of common Pokemon and can like tank a lot of hits. I think this is a pretty good Pokemon this generation. And I would actually, for right now, pre-series wise, from what I've seen, I think Yveltal is stronger than Xerneas. I think the thing is about dealing with Zacian is like Xerneas can actually knock out Zacian with Moonblast at Geomancy +2, but it's really hard to set it up, I think, for that moment. Yveltal, I think, can play around it with like Intimidate, but overall, I think Yveltal can like really like oppress a lot of the bottom tiers, especially without setting up like Weakness Policy and stuff. And it's like really hard for common Pokemon, I think, like really threaten Yveltal immediately, because Yveltal, again, super bulky, can heal up, pretty good coverage in general, with Dark being a really good offensive typing. Fairy is a really good offensive typing too. I mean, these Pokemon are both fantastic. I think right now, I think I've been seeing, I think Yveltal being more threatening in general, especially since like you run steel types to handle fairies. And yeah, I think Yveltal is definitely super scary, especially since Dark type just, again, as I mentioned before, really good typing. The only thing I think about Yveltal is like it could be lower, mainly because you could run Galarian Moltres, which does a similar role to Yveltal. It's got like high speed def, it's the same typing, and you don't have to use your restricted slot. I think the thing that makes Yveltal really cool is the Oblivion Wing, which gives healing, which is pretty nice overall, and like a bit more general bulk. However, like it could go either way. I think Yveltal is a very strong Pokemon though, and definitely has to be prepared for. It just, I think Dark Aura can sweep as well, and it doesn't require like the immediate setup I think that Xerneas requires, especially since like Yveltal is a little bit more flexible in what its moves that can run, and might handle Zacian a bit better because like for instance, a Zacian at neutral attack after 1 Intimidate, because it would be +1, like still threatens a knockout on most Xerneases, and I think that's quite crazy. While Yveltal can usually like live with Behemoth Blade, Airstream, and then it outspeed and can flare, for instance. But yeah, that's why I have Yveltal probably higher. Again, this is subjective, but right now I'm feeling like Yveltal is probably stronger, yet this could definitely change in the future. So we have Zygarde, and we have like all these different forms. Zygarde, I think it's just, man, it really struggled this generation. I don't know why. So if you look at stats, it's not exactly too amazing. Its abilities are Aura Break, which basically invert the effects of Fairy Aura and Dark Aura. It's the Xerneas counter. And Xerneas would be able to get like, you know, in the Yveltal would get what 1.33 multiplier, yet it's inverse, so it actually becomes 0.67 multiplier, which makes its attacks weaker. Plus do Moonblast, but still doing a lot to Zygarde at the end of the day anyway. So yeah. And then the other ability was probably better. It's Power Construct. And what this does is when Zygarde hits below 50% of its HP, it'll transform into Zygarde Complete. And what Zygarde Complete is, man, look at its HP stat. It loses 10 speed to gain a lot of HP, and I mean a lot. With Dynamax, that would actually be insane, because like with Dynamax and like max investment, let's look at it, 600 HP. That's actually insane. Now, the thing about Zygarde that makes it, like, Zygarde got heavily nerfed this generation, like heavily nerfed. Like I didn't realize it at the beginning, but I looked into it and Zygarde got heavily nerfed. So the main thing about Zygarde was it wasn't good in 2016. No one used Zygarde. 2019 Sun and Moon series, people actually used it because of the complete form, and the complete form actually like really changed the game, because what Zygarde was is it gets a move. It gets actually a few signature moves. I think Zygarde gets 3 signature moves, which is crazy. It gets a move known as Core Enforcer, which was never really used, and it's a dragon type move that nullifies the foe's ability if the foe moves first, which isn't that great realistically. And then we got two of the more broken moves in Thousand Arrows and Thousand Waves. If you don't know, Thousand Arrows is a ground type move that actually hits flying type Pokemon and makes them grounded at the same time. Now this is absolutely insane, which means flying does not technically resist ground. And I think that's absolutely insane. And it drags them down. And for instance, if you Thousand Arrows of Zapdos, the first hit will be neutral hit into the Zapdos. And then afterward, the flying type won't resist or be neutral against the Zygarde. So it'll actually be super effective because the Zapdos is normally weak to ground type moves. And yeah, it's like a gravity effect against the opponent. But overall, like, yeah, this move is what made Zygarde insane. It could be really hard hitting. And Thousand Waves is 2, which was a really cool move that prevented switching, which could have been used. I don't think it was ever really used that much in competitive. Like, it was theorized, but with Perish, but overall, not really a super solid move. I think Thousand Arrows definitely was a bigger one. So if we look at Zygarde's stats, it wasn't really impressive, as I mentioned before. Like, these stats aren't like amazing. 100 attack is pretty poor, but it's got decently good bulk, HP and physical defense, and then speed and special defense, not really that great. And then yeah, so what did Zygarde run back in the Sun and Moon series? They ran Misty Seed. It was very common to pair Zygarde with the Tapu Fini. To give it Misty Seed to increase its special defense, you would use Coil, which is a move that can increase its attack and defense by and accuracy by 1 stage, which was accuracy doesn't matter, but the attack and defense actually made a big difference. Allowed it to wall a lot of Pokemon. And the Misty Seed helped with that special defense, could live even like Xerneas boosted Moonblast or Dazzling Gleam after Geomancy, which is insane. And yeah, I think it did quite a bit, especially it was like really bulky. Zygarde actually did have quite a few placements back in the day. The problem with Zygarde now is that option is really hard to pull off now. The reason why is because Tapu Fini doesn't get swagger in Series 8 or in Generation 8 in general. So you can't run the swagger sets, which was really good because Tapu Fini's main goal, swagger, under Misty Terrain, and Heal Pulse. Those were the big things. Yeah, you can't run that. I guess you can run Weakness Policy, but that means you don't get Misty Seed, which is pretty big, and you can only like boost up like +2 once, where like the Tapu Fini would have like Light Screen, Madness for Chip, and a bunch of other things. So Tapu Fini's partnership with Zygarde is a lot worse now because it doesn't have swagger, which is a really big nerf for it. Another big thing is Zygarde's common set, like what you would always see on Zygarde, Thousand Waves, or not Thousand Waves, Thousand Arrows, Extreme Speed, Coil, and Protect. The thing about it is Zygarde also lost Extreme Speed in this generation, and I have no idea why this was like a necessary change, but they got rid of Extreme Speed, and I have no idea why. Also, if you look at his other moveset, it's not really like that worth it. It gets like your standard ground type coverage. It gets a few moves like Haze Glare is actually good as support Pokemon, but again, restrictions aren't like the best for support Pokemon in general. So yeah, I just don't understand why they had to nerf Zygarde this hard. Specifically, I don't see the reason to get rid of Extreme Speed. I can get the swagger thing because it's not like the most learned move, but like, yeah, it's just like a lot tougher. You can run Lumberry Swagger, you can run Weakness Policy with Swagger, but the thing is Zygarde does not much damage even at +2. So yeah, even at +3, it can be very underwhelming damage, and Intimidate just like shuts down Zygarde and like what it can do. And again, Zygarde doesn't have any recovery itself, so it's usually rely on the partner, which means if you KO the Tapu Fini or you KO the Comfey while slowing down the Zygarde, it was actually really tough for the Zygarde to actually do well or do anything while that was in effect. But yeah, I think Zygarde, man, I thought this thing would have had potential, but losing E-Speed and then like Fini not getting swagger just made it really hard to run. I was okay with Zygarde. I actually kind of liked it back in Sun Moon series, even if it played super defensive. The thing was, of course, you're playing around a lot of crits because of how bulky the team style usually played. But yeah, in general, I think it's really tough to run Zygarde now. Even if you have policy, again, activating it once isn't like the biggest deal, especially like one Intimidate afterward. It's kind of tough. You can boost up a Max Quake, which I guess, which can get rid of the Misty Seed necessary need. But yeah, I think Zygarde's technically still better than like Giratina and regular Kirum. I think it does have like somewhat potential, but I think it's pretty low. I think I'd probably put it like one like low mid tier, like barely on the end. Like it's definitely either worse or better than Lugia. I'm gonna say it's worse than Lugia. I'm not 100% sure. Again, this tier is really awkward with like how it's placement. I think ground's technically the best, and then like the rest are like kind of like you could move it wherever. But yeah, I think a big problem with Zygarde, as I mentioned before, yeah, it just struggles a lot. Damage output is just like not there unless it has like a +3 at least boost. Like even +2 is kind of underwhelming at times. It does get max Quake, which is nice. Losing extreme speed is pretty rough for it, I think, in general. Its coverage isn't like the most amazing, even if its support moveset is pretty good. I think the loss of Swagger Tapu Fini just made it like really hard to run, especially since Misty Terrain was so good for it. It, you know, helped against opposing Dragon type moves. It helped it really just helped with like light screen, and of course you could run all that set, but like not running Swagger just I think makes it really rougher for Zygarde. But yeah, I think overall that is going to be the case. I think Zygarde would still be pretty low on the list because of it. I thought it could have potential, but yeah, no E speed is also pretty rough for it as well. So we get to the Gen 7 stuff. I'm just gonna say there's literally no point in running these Pokemon. There's literally no point. Cosmog and Cosmeo, what are these Pokemon? As let's look at this. This isn't a legendary. This is literally your Little Cup, and its moves, it's literally only Teleport and Splash. Absolutely useless. Do not use that Pokemon unless you're memeing. Then we got this thing. It's actually got the good defensive special defense for some reason. I'm actually surprised this actually got stats. And then it got Teleport, Cosmic Power, and Splash. Yeah, absolutely no point in running this Pokemon. Just in general, do not use these Pokemon. Literally use these if you have to. Like, yeah, literally can't attack. Literally can't attack. No point. But then we get to the actual Gen 7 starters. We have Solgaleo, Lunala, and Necrozma. So Solgaleo is actually really good. Yeah, Solgaleo is pretty solid. So this generation with Full Metal Body is a fantastic ability in general. It's basically clear body of Metagross. You can't get your stats lowered by opponents, which is pretty solid. And then, or like in general, even through, yeah, you can't get your stats. Actually, you just can't get your stats lowered in general unless it's from yourself, from Solgaleo itself, like Superpower, for instance. You'll still get the minus attack and minus defense drop from Superpower, but your ally can't lower it, and neither can your opponent. So Solgaleo, as we see, high HP, high attack, pretty good defense. All right, special attack, special defense could be worked on, and speed 97 not being bad. I think Solgaleo is actually a pretty good Pokemon in this format. The reason I think Solgaleo is pretty decent in this format is because I think Steel type Dynamaxes are amazing, especially can ignore Intimidate. And yeah, this is a pretty good Pokemon because of like what it gets coverage wise. As we can see from its coverage, it gets close combat, it gets crunch, which could actually matter like an Assault Vest set if you do decide to go Assault Vest on this Pokemon. Earthquake, Expanding Forest, which is special. I don't think special set on this Pokemon is really that good. Definitely go with the physical set. Sunsteel Strike is an interesting move. It's a signature move. What Sunsteel Strike does, it ignores the abilities of other Pokemon. So it's a mold breaker in the form of an attack. So for instance, if you're facing a Mimikyu with Disguise, Sunsteel Strike actually goes through that Disguise and ignores it. It also ignores like Solid Rock from Hyperior and other things in that nature, which is actually pretty cool. And yeah, it gets access to Psychic Fangs, which is actually pretty nice, as usually if you had to run a second move, it'd be Zen Headbutt. And that wasn't nearly as great because Zen Headbutt can miss. And overall, got pretty good moves. Flare Blitz as well for fire coverage if you really need it. It gets rock coverage as well. And it gets Trick Room, which is actually pretty nice because it's not like the fastest restricted mon out there. And yeah, I think Close Combat's a big buff. I think, yeah, because you don't have to like switch out through Superpower. So I think Close Combat's definitely worth it in this format over Superpower for sure. And yeah, it can boost up its defenses with Sunsteel Strike and the Max Quake from Earthquake. And you can basically like have a weakness policy on the set, like most other steel types that like have Full Metal Body. It's basically potentially a better Metagross in that kind of department, especially since it's faster, which is actually pretty nice because it can boost up like quicker against certain Pokemon. And yeah, I think it's a pretty solid Pokemon. You can get like probably other stats as well, other items as well. It's pretty good tricking wise, so you can run like a bulky berry set, citrus berry. You could run, for instance, Assault Vest if you want. And yeah, it's probably got some decent options like Life Orb as well. I think this thing definitely weakness policy. It's just really good in general against it, especially if you're bulking up immediately with like Steel Spike or Quake. It'd be really nice to have, I think, on Solgaleo, because you're boosting your like Dialga, you boost your defenses, and then they either do, it's a harder time to damage your Solgaleo if they're not hitting with super effective moves, or they hit you with a super effective move and then they get punished for it because of the weakness policy boost. So yeah, I think Solgaleo definitely a good one. Main set used to be Trick Room. Most of the time you would pretty much always run Solgaleo on Trick Room, and it was a big thing in Sun, Moon, and Ultra series. It wasn't like the biggest thing, but it was like decently common. It was mostly paired with like Zygarde actually as a restricted, but of course it's one restricted right now. I think Solgaleo is a pretty decent Pokemon. I think it is probably an A tier Pokemon actually. Yeah, I had Solgaleo on A tier. I think it's a little bit worse than Dialga, mainly because like I think Psychic typing is a weird one because it can benefit and hurt it. I think the thing making it weak to Yveltal, Moltres, and I think like Urshifu is a weird one because literally 97 speed is like speed time with Urshifu, which, you know, you could boost up your defenses, and then after Dynamax is over and then like the Urshifu wins the speed tie or is just faster than you and just goes for the Wicked Blow, like what was the point of all that? So yeah, at that day, yeah, I think Solgaleo would be an A tier under Dialga. I think it's still pretty good. Like Solgaleo is a really strong hitter as well, and being immune to Intimidate is really nice, I think, in general for it. So yeah, I'd definitely put in A tier, I think. Next, we got Lunala, and Lunala was a pretty good Pokemon Sun Moon series and Ultra series. It was a decent one. So it won actually, Lunala won both internationals in the Sun and Moon series. It was actually Xerneas, the combination, that did really well. And Lunala was a pretty good Pokemon back in those series, even if Incineroar was one of the strongest, or probably not the strongest, but the more common Pokemon. It's still pretty good. It's stats wise, it is pretty okay, pretty high HP, decent defenses, and then like, you know, a special attack, not exactly the greatest, but still pretty good in general. Speed was all right. Had Shadow Shield. Now Shadow Shield is a really interesting ability because it's a multi-scale, but it has like a higher hierarchy, I guess you would call it. So yeah, in the game, for instance, we saw that we had Sunsteel Strike from the Solgaleo be able to ignore abilities. Now Sunsteel Strike would be able to ignore multi-scale, for instance. However, for some reason it doesn't work against Lunala's Shadow Shield. Lunala's Shadow Shield actually will still work even if the opponent has Mold Breaker, and I think a few other cases if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, Lunala, I don't know why that ability has like an extra hierarchy, but it does, so it makes Lunala, I guess, a bit better in that regard. So yeah, with the good bulk, even if it's 4 times weak to Ghost and Dark, can sometimes live one hit at least, even if it's a powerful one. And usually would be used to get like Tailwind or Trick Room up in 2019. Very known for like Trick Room and Tailwind. Lunala literally won all the biggest 3 events of like each series. It won Worlds with Nialto using a Trick Room set with Wide Guard, which was pretty cool. And then we saw like Lunala with like Tailwinds in the Sun and Moon series. So overall, I think Lunala was good in those formats. The problem is this format, there's a lot of dark types, as mentioned before, and ghost type offensive, and Dynamax as well kind of like hurts Lunala including, and I think it's actually a lot tougher to run Lunala in this generation more. It also lost a tool, an important tool. Tailwind's no longer move it gets in this generation, so it loses Tailwind, which is pretty big because there are a lot of Lunalas that did run Tailwind especially successfully, but now it doesn't get Tailwind, which is absolutely huge. So it does get Trick Room still, but overall it's definitely a weaker Pokemon. It does get some stuff that's nice about like Dynamax, Max Airstream, I guess, and like, you know, you had the Shadow Shield, which is nice because maybe you can live a powerful Max move even if it's 4 times effective with Dynamax. However, I feel like it's definitely more underwhelming now, for sure. It does struggle against like a lot of dark types. It doesn't even like hit super well against them. It does have Moonblast, I guess, and I guess you could run that, but it's not really like the best counter. But I guess it could theoretically work. It gets good coverage. Losing Tailwind is just like a big shame, I think, because that was like a really good thing that Lunala does get. And yeah, I think Lunala was always a good Pokemon, but however, in this format where Dark and Ghost is like very common, especially because they weren't nearly as common, I think, back in the Sun and Moon series and even Ultra series time, where it was only probably just Incineroar at the time, and the thing you would probably have to worry most about is like a Z move from Incineroar. Now you actually got to watch out a lot with all these new dark type threats. So yeah, pretty tough to run Lunala now. It does get Moongeist Beam, which is the special version and ghost version of the Sunsteel Strike, which is actually a pretty powerful move. But yeah, I think Lunala is just a lot tougher to run. I think right now I probably put in C tier. I have no idea where it'd be in C tier because I haven't used Lunala yet, and I'm just not 100% sure. I think Lunala would probably be like the top of C tier if I'm not mistaken. It's still a good Pokemon in general, with Shadow Shield being a useful ability, and it still has Trick Room, which is good utility. It's just really, I think, a lot tougher to run. I could be proven wrong though. I think Lunala is one of the Pokemon I'm really unsure of where I would put in the tier list theoretically. I think C tier is probably like a fair placement for it, because like I have no idea if it's going to be like really that amazing. It does do decently against maybe like a few Pokemon in the top, but yeah, I think it's like pretty easy to play around Shadow Shield, because for instance, like Eliki Electroweb, for instance, just slow down the Lunala, break the Shadow Shield. I don't think it's like really hard to break the Shadow Shield at all, I think, with Lunala, and then you just get played around with the Dark type move, which will probably just OHKO it after Shadow Shield's busted. And yeah, that's like I think the problem with Lunala. Even if it gets recovery, it's not like recovery was like a big thing in VGC, at least in the Sun, or at least in 2019 it wasn't like a big relevancy thing. So yeah, I think it'd just be tough for Lunala. So I think C tier is like correct here, if I'm not mistaken. It's just really tough with Lunala right now with all the dark types available, and like how Ghost is really good offensively. Following Necrozma, so we have regular Necrozma, and it's just like Kirum. It's laid just like Kirum. Its stats are kind of very underwhelming for a restricted Pokemon. It really is, or at least based from Necrozma. And yeah, it does get some cool things in this generation. It gets Dragon Dance now, which is actually kind of sick, but really it doesn't really get too much. It gets Meteor Beam actually, which could be a thing on like special. I think that's a thing on Dawn Wings, but overall not really a point of using regular Necrozma. It doesn't do that great. It has a good move pool, but not exactly necessary. Like just a regular Necrozma being pure psychic and underwhelming stats isn't that great. So its ability is Prism Armor, and Prism Armor is a good ability, right? It's solid rock basically, and you know, reduces super effective moves by 25%, which is pretty nice in general. Again, it's not really something to save the normal Necrozma. It's just not worth using regular Necrozma. It's literally underwhelming if we compare it to the upcoming Necrozma sets that we're about to see, Dawnwing and Dustmane. So let's start with Dustmane. It's a fused form, literally like Kirum, where it fuses Necrozma with the other legendary Pokemon that gen, and we have Necrozma Dustmane, which is absolutely an insane Pokemon in my opinion. Look at these stats, look at how much better it is than regular Necrozma, and yeah, it gains a pretty big boost in like a lot of its stats in general, and definitely is better worth using. Now let's look at its move pool again. Now it does get access to the Sunsteel Strike, which is a pretty good move to have. It gets access to a lot of good moves. Xerneas is pretty good on this Necrozma. Prism Armor compared with Steel type is really nice because there are a lot of common weaknesses that could be set up for, and then you have a weakness policy that you can run on this Pokemon, which is a pretty good one, especially since this, again, Steel type weakness policy is always really solid because it can boost up your defenses, and it could be like really tough for like opponents to run. The difference between this and Solgaleo is, of course, you do get vulnerable to other stat drops like Intimidate, for instance, from opponents. So there's value in between Solgaleo and Necrozma Dustmane. Both of them have their spots here. I think this is a really solid Pokemon because it's probably more solid in Trick Room. The big thing about Necrozma in this generation though, no Ultra Necrozma. There are no Z moves in this generation, which means you can no longer run Ultra Necrozma. Ultra Necrozma was an absolute beast. I know I used it to win a international championship, literally the last event of the 3DS era, and it was really good. Like Ultra Necrozma Nerve Force as his ability was absolutely insane, but we don't have to worry about that in this generation. We just have to worry about Dustmane and Dynamax and all that. So yeah, overall its move pool pretty solid. It gets quite a few setup. It gets Sword Stance. It gets it just gets a lot. Like this Pokemon does get a lot. Actually, does it get Sword Stance? It does, yeah. So Sword Stance, it gets Trick Room, it gets setup, it gets support, It gets decent coverage, like it gets good enough coverage, right? You got steel, you got psychic, you got ground, you even got fire if you really want to. It could be used as a special set, yet I think the physical set is the better to go. If you're gonna go special like this kind of Pokemon, Dialga is probably better in general in my opinion. So yeah, I think Necrozma is a really solid Pokemon. Dustmane, at least, it's a really good Pokemon. It just can take attacks, especially with Dynamax and Prism Armor stacked. The threat of weakness policy, it can be really hard to damage Necrozma at times. Of course, there is Urshifu. Dark Urshifu can be really scary for that, but with Prism Armor, you'll usually live at least one Wicked Blow guaranteed, which is actually really nice. So there is that as well. And yeah, I think it does have a lot of potential, got decent move pool to work, and I think it's actually a very good Pokemon. I think this Pokemon was a really big threat, especially since I've seen special sets as well. I saw expanding force sets actually with Necrozma. Also, the signature move in Necrozma, which I actually forgot to talk about, Photon Geyser. It's an interesting move. So, Photon Geyser is physical if the user's attack stat is higher than a special attack stat, but it becomes a special move if your special attack stat is higher than your physical attack. Now, you might be wondering, how does this exactly work? It also ignores abilities too, so it's like the Sunsteel Strike and Moongeist Beam psychic version of this. So what's interesting about this is it calculates your attack stat in battle. So for instance, as you can see, Necrozma with 162 attack stat, which means that it's going to be physical when you use Photon Geyser. Now, if the Necrozma is invested in special attack, for instance, and has a attack stat that's higher, like if I invest in max special attack, it is going to be a special attack. Photon Geyser is going to be special. Or if there's stat drops or increase, it's going to matter. For instance, if I get intimidated with Necrozma, this attack stat is going to be calculated with the intimidate, right? So that means generally special attack is going to be higher. So that's how Photon Geyser works, and it's really cool because you could run it on either of the Necrozmas and it'd still be a pretty decent move in general. And yeah, I think overall, like, Necrozma is a very solid Pokemon to have right here. And of course, it does get expanding force if you want to run that. And we can look at Necrozma Dustmane now, or Dawnwings. And Necrozma Dawnwings is always that weird one. So Necrozma Dawnwings is Psychic Ghost. It's really good offensively. I think the best thing about Necrozma Dawnwings placement wise I can remember was I think I got second at Japan Nationals in 2019 in the Ultra Series. It was either finals or top 4. It was one of the two. I actually don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but I remember this thing, and it was really weird of a Pokemon. So if you look at its move pool, it's the same move pool basically. Necrozma Dawnwings probably gets a little bit better coverage because of the access to Heat Wave and Moongeist Beam. Again, Psychic Ghost is really good offensively as a tool, but I think like Prism Armor is kind of weird with this Pokemon because it's 4 times effective attacks, which means it's still doing a ton of damage. Necrozma Dustmane doesn't have a 4 times weakness. Necrozma Dawnwings has 2, and they're very common weaknesses, which is why you never really saw this back too much in 2019. It's because you would only use this if you were using Ultra Necrozma with Moongeist Beam. That was pretty much the main reason why. And yeah, it's just a really interesting Pokemon because it's kind of like Giratina, where it's like that offensive type but slow, but at least this thing gets access to Trick Room, which is nice because it can get Trick Room up, but it's just like, I think, really hard for it. Stats wise, it's pretty much the same as Dawn or Dustmane with a few readjustments right there. Its highest stat is special attack stat. It still has the same speed in general. Again, we don't have Ultra Necrozma, which does hurt this immensely because I used a Dawnwings form when I used Ultra Necrozma. And there were some times where I would use or not go for the Ultra Burst to transfer an Ultra Necrozma. But it's kind of rare in a lot of cases. But I feel like once you're stuck in this form, you have to worry about a lot of Dark and Ghost, especially like spread ones. Stall kind of makes it really hard to let Necrozma do a lot of work. It does get a lot of good coverage though. Earth Power, Heat Wave. It gets Meteor Beam now, which increases special attack. So I guess that could be like okay-ish. But overall, I think it's a lot harder to run this Pokemon. Like, I think this Pokemon can definitely be a threat under the right conditions, but I feel like every team is going to have like a general, at least one Dark or Ghost, because there's so many Psychic types out there. So I think Necrozma Dawnwings, I don't know. It's gonna struggle. It definitely struggles against Calyrex, especially with the spread ghost move. Like, it can work. It's just I feel like you had to put in a lot more effort than you would like other restricted, especially like higher tiers. So yeah, it's definitely one of the more interesting ones for the least. Meteor Beam power can be a set on this. I don't think you really run bulky on Necrozma Dawn Wings. I guess you could run Psychic Seed. Like, you can run Psychic Seed on Necrozma too. I think Necrozma Dustmane's best item is going to be Policy, and then you could run bulky sets, kind of like how Solgaleo does with like Citrus Berry or like you know, like some other stuff, and then or Life Orb, but even offensive. This one you could run Life Orb. Probably it's probably like the same. You could run Psychic Seed. You could run Weakness Policy, I guess, because like you're probably going to be like Snarl or something. But in general, I feel like you're taking a lot of damage. I mean, a lot of damage, even through Prism Armor from like the Dark and Ghost moves, especially since we got like a lot of powerful attacks out there, especially. So yeah, I think if I were rating this Pokemon, I'm pretty sure Dustmane, I think, is an A tier Pokemon. It might be, I think it's lower than Solgaleo. Well, it's kind of like similar. I think it's like really like both of these have like their options. I think it's like, what do you prefer? Do you prefer the Prism Armor, or do you prefer the not having your stats dropped? Because I think they're like both really good in that department. So it's like literally up to preference. I think they're like tied realistically. Regular Necrozma, I'd put in D tier. Not really much of a point to run it. Is it better than Kirum? Might be better than at least regular Kirum. Yeah, I'd probably put it there. And then afterward, Necrozma Dawn Wings. It's viable. Not exactly too sure where I would put it. It's like somewhere. It could be probably like above the Gen 5 legendaries, or it could be below. I think that'd be fair. Like, it can hurt. Expanding Force and Psychic Terrain does do a lot, which is why I'm tempted to put it above. I think the others, yeah, I think I'm gonna put it here for now. I'm not exactly too sure, because like, again, I think C tier very flexible in where you could order these Pokemon. But yeah, I think Necrozma Dawn Wings, like, it has decent potential. I think it's just like the 4 times weakness and Prism Armor not really helping as much, unless you're Dynamax, I guess. But in general, I think like it's always been hard to run the Dawn Wings form, although it could have like more potential. Maybe it could be like lower B potentially. But I feel like there is going to be a lot of dark types, a lot of spread dark types too. We see like Snarl from Yveltal and Incineroar, and then we're going to see Fiery Wrath from Moltres, and then there's a chance to flinch as well. So if it doesn't get Trick Room up, it might get actually screwed, and that's always the thing with hard Trick Room. So yeah, I think yeah, it would be hard to run the Dawn Wings form. So I think C tier is like appropriate for now, at least early session. All right, now we finally have the Gen 8 Legends, and we got quite a few to cover. So we have Zacian up first, and as you might notice, there's a different tier. And yes, let us look at Zacian, one of the most insane Pokemon of this generation. Let's look at the Crown form. So we have regular Zacian, and we got Crown from Zacian. So we have this one, and we have the regular one, which I'll also pull up. So regular Zacian, not really that worth it. It's like if you had Primal Groudon, for instance, and regular Groudon available to you, like which one would you prefer? And the answer is you're gonna go for Primal Groudon because it's like a better Pokemon in general. So like regular Zacian, stats wise is actually still pretty good. 130 attack is very underwhelming, of course, but with Intrepid Sword, as its ability still gets a +1, and pure Fairy type, but overall not exactly that great. It doesn't get a signature move. It gets pretty good coverage. Of course, the Crown form does get better. Basically, in order to have that Crown form, you just gotta attach the Rusted Sword to it. So yeah, I think overall with Zacian, it is actually, I guess you could run this theoretically. There's a way you can actually check out if your opponent brought Zacian, if it's the Crown form, by checking the team preview and seeing if the form changes, because in team preview it shows this form as Zacian, but in the battle it will actually show the Crown form if the trainer actually brought it. So if they do have the Crown form Zacian, overall not really that worth it to bring regular Zacian, but it's actually a lot better than, like, let's say bring regular Zacian compared to like bring Necrozma or Kirum. It'd probably be like it'd probably be, actually could even be better than some of these, but in general I think you would always go for the Crown form anyway, which is the Rusted Sword. Basically you're training your item for a form change, and this is pretty big. You can't get tricked, which is a big thing. You can't get knocked off. Just like how Z moves and Mega Crystals work, absolutely huge, which means you can't get shut down by like those kind of strategies, especially like Trick, which has been common to stop Dynamaxes. The thing about Zacian, it's interesting because the main 3 legendaries of Gen 8 can't Dynamax. So this Pokemon can't Dynamax, which is fine because of what it can do realistically. This Pokemon's absolutely insane. Look at its stats. 92 HP with 115 defenses is very solid. Like, it's not the bulkiest thing, but like it's pretty solid. Like, it really is. 170 attack is absolutely insane, including its ability, which gives it a +1 attack set every time it enters the field, and it resets every time you do that. So if you switch out Zacian and you switch it back in, it will be able to get a +1 again. So that's absolutely insane, especially after 170 already. Then 148 speed is one of the fastest restricted Pokemon on this tier list, actually. Very insane. It's actually the second fastest restricted Pokemon in literally it's like the second fastest restricted Pokemon. So yeah, this Pokemon absolutely insane. If you don't know, Iron Head on the regular Zacian will turn into Behemoth Blade, a steel type move, 100 base power, and if the opponent is Dynamaxed, it does double the damage. So that's absolutely insane. That really just makes Dynamax Xerneas obviously a lot. Can't really, like, Behemoth Blade will still knock out Dynamax Xerneas. It doesn't matter if Xerneas is Dynamax, you're okay with Behemoth Blade. Absolutely insane move. Really solid, I think, in general. This Pokemon, I don't think there's literally not much to say about it. This thing is absolutely impressive. Like, it gets a lot. Like, Behemoth Blade is a fantastic move, especially against opposing Dynamax. Close combat, really good coverage for the fighting coverage. Basically, what you hit would be, you're not hitting with Behemoth Blade. Like the steel types that resist it, for the fire types, hit them with close combat. You can hit in similar close combat and it will do a ton of damage. Play rough, I never felt like play rough necessary. It's like nice if you like really need the fairy coverage, but in general, I feel like Behemoth Blade's a very just, you know, spammable move. You don't need play rough a lot of the time. I guess in certain situations where you do have limited power points, it does. Behemoth Blade is only 5 power points, 8 max. I guess if you want play rough, you could definitely go for it. I don't think it's absolutely necessary at all. Substitute is probably one of the better ones. Like, this thing gets set up in Substitute and Sword Stance. Substitute is one most of the players have been really liking because of the fact that you can block a bunch of Intimidates, especially because like with Zacian, you gotta really slow it down, right? With Intimidate is a really good way to usually do it. You'll still have 170 attack though, and then if you just like sub up and shut down the Intimidates, it really punishes defensive play because if they lead wrong or in a bad position against Zacian, if they play defensive, they get really punished by a sub up, especially like blocking Intimidate. Like if they have like their Intimidate Mon out there right now and then they try to switch out, you could sub up. And yeah, then you don't get intimidated behind the sub, and it's really solid. And Sword Stance, probably over necessary, but like it can also be used as a punish tool. There have been a few Sword Stance Zacians I've seen. I think sub is definitely the better one, especially since you could like stall out max turns if you don't need to Behemoth Blade immediately, and you know, just, you know, punish really defensive positions, especially since like sub is really good on Zacian because you're not Dynamaxing it, so you don't have to worry about Dynamaxing the Zacian and potentially losing your sub when it happens. But yeah, it has pretty okay coverage moves with Wild Charge and Crunch, which is basically what it really needs. I think really this Pokemon is absolutely insane. It's really hard to handle, I think, in general. I think Zacian is definitely the best restricted as of now, from what I've seen. I think it's really hard to play around, and like the counters are kind of like more soft checks. It's kind of like Behemoth Blade, for instance, does so much at +1, and it's like it Dynamaxes it to counterplay sometimes. I think that's absolutely insane. Like, you use Dynamax as a defensive tool sometimes, and then like the Behemoth Blade is still doing the same amount even if you're not Dynamax as much as it's not Dynamax. Like, I think that's actually crazy. It's like really hard to play defensively against Zacian. There are some Pokemon that do really well against it. Of course, intimidating is always like a plan, but of course base 170 attack is still going to hurt even at neutral. The ability to, like close combat is still going to do a lot. At +1, close combat does a lot to like Rotom Heat, for instance, and other fire types. There are, I think, very few good answers to Zacian, reliable, that aren't like restricted Pokemon. For instance, like the Torkoal. I think Torkoal is probably one of the better Zacians with its high defenses, but close combat is still doing a decent amount to it. I think overall, like sub Zacian can play around a lot of Pokemon, and I think it's like really hard to handle. And I've seen a lot of Zacian. If we saw from like some of the tournaments we've seen, Zacian has done like super well, especially in the Battle of Legends, where it's like one of the most dominant Pokemon, and it's really hard for like to maneuver against it, I think, in some cases. So teams really need answers to Zacians, because unlike a Xerneas that like needs to turn the charge up, Zacian already super fast, already got sword out and is ready to do some slicing. Yveltal a little bit slow, can be managed a bit better, but Zacian very fast Pokemon, really hard to handle. I think Zacian is like one of the top restricted. It might not be like SS tier. I could definitely see it dropping to S tier, like regular S tier in the future, but I do think it is one of the top mons, and I do think it's currently like really hard to handle. So I'd put it at SS tier for now. I think it could definitely drop in S tier though, as like we learn more about like how to handle this Zacian more effectively. But right now I think it is I think it's a little bit better than these. Not by like a large margin though. It's like really close on the border, but I think Zacian does stand out a little bit more. So I'd put it probably as the top right now. Unfortunately, unlike Zacian, we have Zamazenta, and God, why did they not get this thing body press? Like this body press was like a move made for Zamazenta. Why did they not? So we got Zamazenta. If you don't know, it's Zacian's counterpart for shield. And oh my God, I don't get why. So it gets +1 defense instead of +1 attack, which, you know, isn't obviously. I think you would probably want the attack, but the defense, you know, if it gets body press, could actually work. It's a fighting type, could get staff on body press, but no, it doesn't get body press for some reason. Its moves probably more underwhelming for sure. It's a fighting type over fairy type, and yeah, its stronger move like close combat lowers its defenses, which is very sad about it. It does get really good support moves though, it really does, but overall Zamazenta, especially like non-crownless form, would probably be like at the bottom of like, I think it'd probably be bottom of C or even D tier at that point. And then Zamazenta Rusted Shield is still, it's actually better than I expected originally, because I actually didn't realize how high this attack stat was naturally. So against defenses, and it's 145 base defense, special defense is actually very solid. It does lose speed though, 10 speed, which makes it worse because like under speeding base 130s is a little bit tough for it. And yeah, I think that makes it rough. It's still faster than a lot of Pokemon that you would probably want to do support with, like coaching or Howl and stuff, like Thundurus, Incarnate Form for instance. That could be like a really helpful mod, but I don't know, it's just like really tough. It does get good support moves, as I mentioned before. With the Steel type, Behemoth Bash, same thing as it's literally the same thing as Behemoth Blade, just a different move name. Close combat, which it does get stab off, which is a difference. Doesn't get stab play rough, it gets close combat instead. Same basically movesets, but as Zacian coverage wise, but it gets like support moves like coaching, Howl, helping hand, guard swap even, I guess, if you really want to go that way. Wide guard, but overall, like, I think if this Pokemon needs to change, you just give it Behemoth Bash and make it based on its defense stat, or give it body press and or both, and this mon would have actually probably been pretty solid. But I think with just like this, it's not really amazing. Yeah, because Dauntless Shield gives you +1 defense. These, like, it's not doing as much damage. It's a defensive restricted, which is a lot harder to run. Yeah, I'm just not exactly too sure about like how viable this Pokemon is. I feel like it could probably have a role somewhere, but I feel like it's definitely one of the more underwhelming restrictions for sure. And I feel like not resisting flying or fairy for your steel type is pretty huge. So I don't think it's as unviable as a Pokemon in D tier, because I think it actually might be better than some of them, especially since 130, if you're boosting with Howl, I guess it's not too bad. I just wish it literally had body press. I think if we get body press, it would actually be pretty good. I think Zamazenta is actually C tier, like low. I think that's the case. If it wasn't for the 130 attack stat, I thought it was like originally like 110. 130 kind of saves it from being like D tier, I think. So yeah, I put it in C tier. I think it does have roles, but like it's really underwhelming to a restricted Pokemon. And yeah, I just not a huge fan of support restricted. So yeah, I think Zamazenta is C tier. Like I think it has a little bit more than just like Giratina and regular forms overall, because it can boost up itself with Howl, I guess, and its ally, which isn't bad. And its support moveset gives enough, and I think Behemoth Bash is a great move. But overall, I think it's super underwhelming compared to its counterpart. Next, we have Eternatus. I don't know how to pronounce this Pokemon's name, but it's an interesting Pokemon. It's a dragon poison type, which is interesting. So basically kind of like Naganadel, but its stats are quite monstrous. This Pokemon can't Dynamax as a note. It has 140 base HP and defenses are all right. Its special attack is pretty good. 145 is pretty nice. 130 speed, which is, you know, really solid. However, of course, there are like faster restrictors out there. So, yeah. I think this Pokemon is really interesting. So we don't get its final form. Its final form actually has different stats, which is actually like crazy. But yeah, so we have this for now, and it's not a bad Pokemon. It doesn't require a held item, unlike the Zamazenta Zacian stuff. Pressure is interesting because pressure might not be a bad move on this Pokemon because it has recovery and it's pretty bulky in general. So I think pressure is not a bad ability. It could have maybe had something better, but not bad at the end of the day. Its move pool pretty decent. So of course Dragon Poison, so it gets Dragon type coverage. It gets access to Fire move Flamethrower, which is really nice. It gets some decent support recovery as well, and overall I guess it gets Toxic as well. Its signature move isn't that great in doubles. It's Internal Beam. Really cool animation, by the way. This move animation is super sick. I've seen it. I saw it for like the first time recently, and it's a really cool animation, but it's, you know, it's like Hyper Beam basically. It's like a Dragon type Hyper Beam. Not exactly worth it, especially since you can't Dynamax this mon and spam like Internal Beam or like Max Dragon at 160 base power, which would actually be insane. But yeah, otherwise it really doesn't get too much. It gets some support, as I mentioned before, Cosmic Power, which is kind of interesting because Cosmic Power is probably stuff people have been hyping about, because Cosmic Power recover. 2 attacks you could run, like Flamethrower, Internal Beam, or Dynamax Cannon. Dynamax Cannon is the other signature move it gets. It doubles the damage if the target is Dynamax. As we've seen before, it's like the special dragon version of Behemoth Blade and Behemoth Bash. And yeah, it's pretty good. Like, it's 8 power points still. It's not bad of a move. So yeah, Dynamax Cannon is not a bad move at all. Like, it's pretty good with the stab factor. I don't even know if you're going to realistically need it, but I mean, you might as well against like other common Pokemon that Dynamax is going to hit pretty hard. So I guess you would run it over Sludge Bomb. Although Sludge Bomb is kind of nice because of like hitting fairies, for instance, like Xerneas, for instance. I think it'd be kind of weird because I feel like the common says probably Cosmic Power, but you want to run Cosmic Power recover, and then the other is interesting because you would probably want Poison to hit Xerneas and other fairy types, and then you would want Flamethrower so you don't get walled by the steel types, but you would also want Dynamax Cannon, which can hit pretty hard against Pokemon that are Dynamaxing. So it's kind of a weird move syndrome, I guess. Overall, this Pokemon I'm really confused about, because this Pokemon I feel like has the potential, yet I have like no idea where I put it on the tier list because I haven't seen that potential yet. I feel like this Pokemon, obviously stat wise, is super solid. I just don't know where I'd place it on my tier list because I think this Pokemon I would argue so much about. So, oh, where would I put this Pokemon? I think the thing that makes it weird in this format is it is weak to Psychic, which again, with some size spam in this generation, with like a lot of the Psychic restricteds, makes it kind of insane. It does get Substitute as well. It's just a really weird Pokemon, I feel like. I don't think Cosmic Power is that great because I feel like it's very easy to actually prevent it with like a lot of the restricteds, like just outpowering it in general. Like because you're gonna run speed to set up the Cosmic Power, and then if you run speed, that means you can't invest as much bulk, and then like Zacian outspeeds this. Calyrex do really well against Eternatus. I think it's just like really weird of a Pokemon. I don't know where I would put this. It's either B or C tier. I think it's definitely more useful than D tier, but I have no idea where I would realistically put this mon. I feel like it'd be a C tier Pokemon, like based on like move syndrome, and like it's not as much, like it can stall out teams under the right conditions, but I feel like you really shouldn't be allowing that if you're the opponent. It is really tough to say. I think I'm actually gonna put this in C. Now I don't know where I'd put it in C though, that's the thing. I think probably above Rayquaza. I'm just not sure. It's a really weird Pokemon. It really is weird, because I don't know where I'd put this Pokemon specifically. It's just so tough to actually find a placement, because I haven't seen many good Eternatus sets either. And every time I played against it, it seemed a bit actually underwhelming. So I don't know where this Pokemon goes, but I think C tier for now is fair. I think it gets some tools that are really useful, and its stats are really solid. I think it's just like, I don't know what role it specifically has that's like absolutely useful compared to like the other restricteds, where it's it doesn't really support. It's like it supports itself, and then like it's not even offensive support. It like supports itself in a defensive way and doesn't benefit the team nearly as much. I feel like it's kind of like a solo restricted right there. So yeah, while the other restricteds can provide utility to like the entire team with like you know, like speed control and other stuff, I feel like Eternatus is just a really strange Pokemon, and I don't know where I would put it. So I think C tier is fine. Next we got the Calyrexes, which is the final restricted. So we're almost done with the tier list. I don't know how long this video has been going, but I think it's been like an hour or something. But Eternatus, or not Eternatus, Calyrex. God, this thing has a huge head. It's got a huge head, huge brain. They made fun of me at school for having a large head, but maybe Calyrex gets the same thing, and maybe we're actually really big brained. I gotta find a horse of myself, or a trusty steed. But overall, look at this grass stats. I think this can basically tell you how viable this Pokemon is, and how like fused forms and stuff are like always better. Grass type is a terrible typing. We've seen Celebi. We don't see Celebi actually, and it would still not be great because its typing is terrible. It's one of the worst defensive typings there. It's not like the worst, but literally pretty bad because it's weak to a lot of common types. I think that's just like how grass types do in general. And overall, yeah, I mean, it gets okay moves, but why use this literally when you have better Pokemon? So Calyrex is going in the F tier, and I mean the F tier. Like literally regular Kirum and Necrozma have better stats than Calyrex, like by a long shot, and their typing doesn't nearly, I think it's, their typing is like better than just Calyrex adding the grass weakness. And yeah, if you can take a look at this list, most of these Pokemon on this list can easily be grass typing, so it's an F tier for me. Next we have the Ice Rider and the Ghost Rider. So Ice Rider Calyrex, very interesting Pokemon. So fused with Glastrier, and Glastrier was a very dominating force in Series 7. And it's actually pretty good stat wise. Now, I think this is confusing for me because this Pokemon gets Psychic as a typing, and I don't know if that's good or bad for it, because I don't think you need to stab Psychic coverage. Like, I guess you can pair it with NDD, set up Trick Room, and then like Max Mindstorm or like Zen Headbutt. I don't know if that's like absolutely worth it for the extra weaknesses you get. It's not like you're using Expanding Force either with this Pokemon specifically, so I don't know if it's worth it on the Ice Calyrex. I think Glastrier could technically be better. Yeah, the thing that makes Ice Calyrex pretty good is it can set up its own Trick Room, so you can have a you can have a Trick Room on and the Glastrier on the same team and they provide like the similar role. But of course that does give you up a coverage move, or that does give you up Protect, which is absolutely huge. Really high stats in general. 50 speed is interesting. It's literally, I think, perfect, because if it was any bit slower, it'd be risking speed ties of like with Incineroar and stuff. So you could run this min speed and it would still underspeed a lot in Trick Room. And yeah, I think that makes it better, like at least for now. And yeah, as one is a really good ability. Unnerve combined with Chilling Neigh or Nye or whatever you want to call it, absolutely amazing, because that punishes defensive abilities like Shuckle Berry and Incineroar. Can't really like switch into this as well as it could. And then you can get the +1 if you get the KOs and this thing starts sweeping. It also has a really good move, as we'll see in a little bit. But yeah, as one, fantastic ability. Both forms of Calyrex is absolutely incredible. and it ignores neutralizing gas, which is actually huge. So you can pair it with Weezing Regigigas, or it's really good against those because this Pokemon's super bulky. So as we look at his moveset, pretty good. Its signature move is Glacial Lance, Glacial Lance. So it is an ice type move, 130 base power, and it's spread, so it hits both the opponent's Pokemon, and it's a pretty strong move to hit in Trick Room. Like, it's really strong. Also got a sick animation, by the way. It's got a sick animation. I love it. But yeah, this Pokemon absolutely insane. Stronger Icicle Crash that always hits, and its spread is actually incredible. Yeah, not much to say about it. It's like super strong. Gets the same moves basically as the Ice Horse in Glacier Air, where it gets like access to max Quake with like high horsepower. It gets close combat for fighting coverage. It gets dark coverage. It also gets psychic and grass coverage, which again, I'm not exactly too sure if it's like useful in this. Trick Room is really good on this Pokemon. You could run fast, I guess. I know some players opted for fast Glacier Air in Series 7. I don't think it was good personally. Yeah, maybe it's worth it with Calyrex with like Airstream stuff, but I don't think it's absolutely worth it at all, because you're sacrificing a lot of bulk that you could be having. But this thing has really good natural bulk anyway, so it might be worth it. This Pokemon's a threat. Unprepared, this thing is a threat. Now, I think the thing that holds back Calyrex, of course, the psychic typing is a bit awkward because it does give more weaknesses, and I don't think the offensive coverage is absolutely worth it, in my opinion, especially if you're not running Indeedee. I don't think it's worth it at all. And then you also got the fact that it's a slow restricted, which means you're usually taking damage, and it's like the same problem with Glacier, right? Like, you sit there, you're taking the attacks, but if you don't get the Trick Room up, it's really hard as well, because you take a lot of damage in general. Like, you probably won't get O-Code. It's actually really hard to KO this Pokemon with like how bulky it is. But yeah, because like the only thing that can really knock it out is like sun boosted attacks or Zacian, which in general that's basically going to be how it works. But yeah, you usually just take a bunch of damage, and then if you don't sweep in the Trick Room and you take a lot of chip, like you're probably going to get the Trick Room stalled out, and then you get O-Code back. But overall, if this Pokemon gets healthy, it's like remains healthy and gets positions where it can just get KOs, especially like one KO just equals a sweep, it's really nice. And Intimidate does slow it down a bit, but like 165 attack is still a pretty big boost. So yeah, I think overall, really strong Pokemon. They somehow made Ice Horse potentially even stronger. I'm not sure if it's like worth running it over Glacier, because you could actually run Glacier Air still in the formats, and you could technically have both Ice Horses. There's nothing worse than one Ice Horse than two. But yeah, I just not exactly too sure. Like, it's just a Trick Room itself, but you do have to like sacrifice a coverage move, which I think is really big in general, which means you probably give up like Steel Spike if you're like the Assault Vest set. Well, you can't run Assault Vest in Trick Room, so there's the thing. This thing has probably like a good amount of items it can run. It could run Policy, it can run Life Orb, there's that kind of stuff. I think it's has some interesting things. It could even run Choice Band with Glacial Lance with like speed swap stuff. Definitely a thing. So yeah, I think this thing is pretty strong. I don't know like how strong it would be, but yeah, I think I'm going to talk about Ghost Rider, and then I'll rank the Calyrex forms. So we have Ghost Rider, which is Spectre Air with Calyrex combined. Look at this. 150 speed is the fastest restricted Pokemon on like allowed in Series 8, and that's absolutely insane. 165 special attack too, so you don't need Trick Room. The downside is its bulk is a lot worse, but still got pretty good special defense and HP, and then defense is 80, which is kind of low, but you could just like, you know, of course always support it with Intimidate, and it really does work out. And yeah, I think Ghost Calyrex is absolutely amazing. Outspeeding Zacian is really crazy. I think with Life Orb, this thing is absolutely insane, especially like helping hand support, can just like pick up knockouts. And yeah, this Pokemon does so much damage. Like, ooh, people doubted this when they first saw it, like they did with Spectre. Spectre rose up in Series 7, and I think this Pokemon's pretty good in Series 8. Like, I think this thing, Astral Barrage, it's the special Glacial Lance of the Ghost Calyrex. It's 120 base power. It's a spread move. Does a lot, absolutely worth it for sure. Expanding Force I think is really good on this one because you can pair this with like Psychic Terrain mons like Indeedee or Lele, or you could just like set up yourself with like maxing Calyrex. Remember, both Calyxes you can actually Dynamax, which is actually pretty insane. And yeah, set up the Psychic Terrain, then Expanding Force afterward, especially if you're able to get like a as one boost, is that it goes pretty hard. And then you got like, you know, it's not exactly the best move set. It did gain a little bit more coverage with like the Calyx fusion with like Leaf Storm. I don't think it's worth it at all. Gets access to the Mud Shot, Max Quake like it always does, Max Strike from Hyper Beam. Gets really good support moves actually, like Taunt, Nasty Plot is really good for setup. I think Substitute's amazing. Encore is all right. It just gets, even gets Trick Room. It even gets Trick Room. Heal Pulse, Life Dew, Pollen Puff is actually like a really good... It's weird because it has a lot of good support moves, but I don't think it's necessary at all. But I think Ghost Calyrex is absolutely amazing. I think Life Orb is really the best item on this. It's really good offensively. I don't know what else you would run. Maybe Assault Vest or something. If you want to go that, like how they ran Assault Vest, Thunderous Eyes on Defiant Thunderous. I guess you could run that for the Calyrex, but I think Life Orb is clearly the best item by far. Maybe you could go Choice Specs if you really want to, but I think Life Orb is the best item offensively. You could run maybe Focus Sash. I don't think it's absolutely worth it. Yeah, I think I guess I've seen also like Psychic Seed, but Psychic Seed felt really underwhelming, especially if you're like playing the Calyrex Mirror. I think just like going offensive with this Calyrex and doing damage is really nice. I think Nasty Plot is a bit overkill, but like if you set up the Nasty Plot and then they don't have a Natural Barrage or Expanding Force switching, yeah, that's a good game right there. But in general, I think Calyrex does have a lot of good potential. It's like really hard to switch into if you don't have a dark type, but most teams will probably have a dark type. I think you just play around the dark type, of course. This thing does get Draining Kiss, but I don't think it's worth it either. I think you could play around dark types, and this thing again being like really fast as it is, providing hard damage, and it's really fast, so like Max Phantasm can combo into other things like Scar Dracovish Vicious Rend, to give an example, and other things. I think that's actually pretty huge. So yeah, I think Ghost this also, like, it has pretty good natural bulk. Its late D fast is restricted on the list. It's super solid, hits really hard, good spread moves, ability to Dynamax is absolutely insane. So yeah, I think it's a really good Pokemon. In fact, Ice Rider, I'd probably put it in B tier, probably like the high B tier. I think it could be potentially A. I just think taking the chip is a bit, I think, because A, you could run Glastrier instead. Kind of like, yeah, I think you could run Glastrier instead and it wouldn't have the same weaknesses, and just run a different Trick Room on, because to have Trick Room you do have to sacrifice a move slot, I feel like, which is a little bit of a pain. And then it takes a lot more damage, I feel like, than the Pokemon in A tier that can set up kind of like a similar role. So yeah, that's why I put Calyrex Ice Rider in B, although it's definitely a really big threat you got to watch out for if it's able to position itself right. But yeah, I think right now B is probably appropriate. I feel like, I think the ability to have Trick Room, the damage output it does, but the thing is it's super slow, so you can usually damage it, and it can't Dynamax and set up Trick Room on the same turn, so that's absolutely huge, I think. So yeah, I think B tier is correct. Then we got Ghost Rider Calyrex, and I think Ghost Rider Calyrex is a S tier Pokemon. I don't think it's above Kyogre. Potentially it could be. I think S tier could also, like, you could balance it out. I think I'd probably actually put it there. Yeah, I think could be better than Yveltal Xerneas, but I think it's like how you prep for it. It is again really weak to darks, but I feel like you can cover the weaknesses a lot better, and I think it offers a lot more threatening potential than like the other Pokemon that like struggle against dark types in general. And I really do like Sub Calyrex a lot to cover for like the Sucker Punch weakness. And yeah, again, the strong spread moves and the ability to snowball immediately, I feel like, is absolutely insane, and it does really well against a lot of other restricteds. Like against it can do really well against like Zacian and other Pokemon. So yeah, I think S tier is pretty appropriate for this Calyrex because it's a really big threat, has really strong spread moves, and does pretty well against, I think, a majority of the Pokemon on the list here. But yeah, that is going to be my Series 8 tier list. This is the complete version. Let me know your opinions in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this kind of videos, I hope I probably went on for a long time about this tier list, but I hope it gave you some insight, especially like what Pokemon could have in previous generations and how it could apply now, and my opinions of what these Pokemon could potentially do. I think the only thing I didn't cover was Eternatus' item choices, and really, I don't know. You could run Policy, I guess. You could run Black Sludge, Berry. I don't know. Like, I think Eternatus is like the Pokemon I just like have the least data about. So we'll see if it can actually do something. But yeah, that is going to be the tier list for today. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the YouTube channel if you have enjoyed this video, and leave a like down below, as it really does help out. Leave that comment again. Let me know your tier list and like opinions. Whether you agree, whether you disagree, just be civil in the comments down below. It's a very simple thing, I think, and very reasonable thing for me to ask for. So yeah, otherwise that is going to be pretty much it. You can check out my other stuff. Make sure you check out part 1 if you hadn't already for some reason. You can check out more of my series 8 content, and I have a lot more planned soon. So yeah, thank you all for tuning in. You could check out my Twitch channel as well, where I do live stream series 8, and if you have questions there, feel free to ask me. But yeah, have a great day, people, and until we bow again, I'll catch y'all later.